Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, in this episode I'm going to give you my 10 best tips on shooting urban landscapes. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, my name is Serge Ramelli. I'm a French photographer living where? Living in Paris, France. I am still in Los Angeles. It's very warm and it's winter, which is really cool. I make 2 tutorials per week. Click here if you want to subscribe to my newsletters and get all the raw files, Photoshop actions, over thousands of files for free, or click here if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In last episode, I showed you the result of the urban landscape challenge and gave you some tips and tricks on urban landscape. It gave me the idea of continuing against tips and tricks, and I was sitting down trying to figure out what is my 10 best tips for shooting urban landscape. Well, mesdames et messieurs, here they are. Okay, mesdames et messieurs, so here is my best 10 tips for shooting urban landscapes. And I've been doing this for 10 years and some things have worked for me, some things have not. Now, of course, it's not possible to apply all these tips in one photo, but it's just things for me that really worked over the years. Tip number 1, and probably the most important one, is shoot in the right light. And if you're lucky, it doesn't happen every day, but there is 3 types of lights which are amazing to shoot urban landscape. The first one is what we call the golden hour. Now the golden hour is when the sun is coming down. This is a good example in Los Angeles where the sun is coming down and basically everything becomes sort of yellowish. Okay, that's the first phenomena that happens before the sunset, and it's pretty cool. Sometimes you can get really nice photo like this one photo that I really like. And it actually usually goes for about 20-25 minutes, and it's before the sunset. So that's the first period. The second period is the sunset itself. That's usually a sunset lasts about 25 minutes, but like when it's really nice, and it really depends from countries, but I find that the amazing light usually lasts for 5-10 minutes. But there are exceptions. The other day I was in Los Angeles and there was a sunset that went on for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Like, I mean, the sky was amazing for like over an hour. I was like, I'd never seen that. But usually it's more like 10 minutes. Like this one time also in Los Angeles was just 10 minutes. Okay, and then you get, after the sunset, once the sun is behind the horizon, you get the blue hour. Now, whether the blue hour is just the sun is behind the horizon, and you see it even better when you're facing west. The sky is not yet black and it's getting blue. We call this entre chien et loup in French. And that lasts for about half an hour. So you got about 20-25 minutes of golden hour, 10 minutes of sunset, and then about 20-25 minutes of golden hour. So the whole thing happens over like 1 hour, 1.5 hours. This is when you should be shooting. And this is my tip number 1. Tip number 2, always use a tripod to get long exposures and lowest ISO possible. What I mean by that is don't shoot urban landscape with your hand. Use a tripod. Make sure that it's a pretty stable one, and always shoot with the lowest ISO possible, because the problem is if you shoot by hand, well, first you're not going to get the long exposure look, which is the cars, trails, the clouds getting a bit stretchy. Look at that helicopter making a line. I left it on purpose. I thought it was kind of cool. This you get because you're on a tripod. So the photo is going to be completely different. So tripod is mandatory. And that's why I'm using, and you can find this on my gear page, a very small Gizmo tripod, because I literally have it on me all the time. Okay. Next is shoot in manual mode to control better your light. Let me give you an example. I never shoot in AV mode when I shoot, or I try to be as much as possible in manual mode, because the camera does not know the look you're going for. The camera is going to expose your photo, taking into considerations like a database, but for example, for this photo, which ended up to be this photo and actually ended up being the cover of my book in Paris, I shot 3 shots of it. Normal exposure, overexposure, and underexposure. But in most cases, I actually even only use the normal exposure. But you see, this one I really shot for the highlights, meaning that it's very dark. This is the raw file untouched. It's very dark. You don't see much going on in the buildings. but you've got all the details in the sky. And what's going to make an amazing urban landscape if you've got an amazing drama in the sky? And you only get that with a bit of an underexposed photo. So always shoot manual and always expose for the highlights. Next tip is find leading lines. Okay, this is a leading line. Let me show you on the retouch photo. This is a leading line. You know, this whole car trail is going to lead me to this beautiful conciergerie in Paris, a beautiful area. There you have the Châtelet and you have the Louvre behind there. It's really, it's beautiful, but that line is leading that. So always trying to find leading lines. Another example of leading lines. You see how the Pont Neuf, my favorite bridge in Paris, you know, leads the photo toward where the sunset is and where this old buildings are. So finding leading lines. Here's another example, leading lines. You know, this little way here in the middle brings me to New York, Manhattan. You know, it leads me into the photo. It just guides the eyes. All right, so find leading lines. The next thing that is super important, and I think this is the biggest mistake people make, is that a photo has a urban landscape has usually three elements: a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. Okay, the foreground in this photo is basically this path. Okay, it's got an amazing leading line toward the Sacré-Cœur, beautiful church in Paris. So that's my leading line leading into the middle ground, which is all these old buildings and the Sacré-Cœur. The background being only this nice clouds. So always work foreground, middle ground, background. Here is another example, not as nice, but I shot this when it was raining. So we have like that car is LED, that car is LED, so we have the reflection, that's the foreground. And the buildings and the bridge for me is only the middle ground, and the sky, the little sky that you can see a little bit in the back, is the background. So a lot of people usually have amazing foreground, they have an amazing middle ground, but they have a very poor foreground. Foreground, I think it's one of the hardest things to find. That's the one thing I find that it's the harder to find, is the right foreground. So I insist on that because it's not easy. It really is not easy to get a cool foreground. For example, on this photo, I don't like so much a foreground. I don't like this so much. You know, I think this one is a bit more. It's better because this lines gives a more stronger foreground. On this one, the foreground is just that dark, you know, little hill, which is cool because it contrasts with the sun here. So anyways, that's always the challenge. Foreground, middle ground, background. Watch for all three of them. Okay, next is there is two apps that I use all the time that I want to show you when I do a urban landscape. And the first one is called Sun Seeker, 3D augmented reality view. And basically what it does is when I come to a location, I use this app to find out at what time the sun is going to be where in the scene, because you might know that the sunset is at 5:30 or 5:45, but you want to know when the sun is going to be hitting the top of a building, and that could very well be at 5:10. And this app will give you exactly, you just look through your iPhone and it's going to tell you exactly where the sun is going to be, so I know when to come back and when to get the look I'm going for. This is probably the app that I used the most, Sun Seeker. You will find a link of all the tips and that app in the description of this video. The other app that I use all the time is called PhotoCalc. I couldn't find the link on iTunes. PhotoCalc, but you'll find the link that will bring you to the right link if you just look for PhotoCalc on your iPhone. And I only use it, it's got all kind of stuff, but what's really good is that it gives you really when the sunset starts and when it ends. And I always start shooting 1 hour before the sunset starts. All right. The next tip is try to use simple composition. Meaning on this one, for example, I had cars here. I spent hours photoshopping 2 cars out of this because I wanted it to be pure. And I actually did a big fine art print of this, which is selling like pancakes in galleries, you know, but it took me hours to take out the cars. So because I wanted to simplify my message, the cars were distracting, you know, and people are not even allowed to park there, you know. I mean, I gave them a favor. Okay, here's another example. The Eiffel Tower. On this one, I only have a middle ground and foreground. There's no foreground, sorry. I have a middle ground and background. I don't have a foreground, but it's very simplified. That's why I say all these rules cannot be applied to one photo. But, you know, if you've been doing urban landscape photography, you probably all know this, but I'll give you a personal example why I would have loved to hear these tips 10 years ago. I would have economized hundreds and hundreds of hours, because I give you the first example, which I already gave once on this YouTube channel. Is once I was the first time I got 100% ISO, aperture, and tripods, and all that work, how to shoot urban landscape. I went in Paris and started shooting Paris from one end of the Seine to the other, so going through the whole historical part of Paris. I shot from after sunset to 1 o'clock in the morning, and all my photos were with a very black sky. There was no detail in the sky, it was just pure black. But they were kind of nice, because Paris is a beautiful city. And then the next day I showed them to a photographer, and I'm showing him all these photos. He says, yeah, it's nice, but you got no drama. There's no details in the sky. Nothing's happening. You're missing your background. But I'm like, yeah, but the sunset was only 10 minutes. It says, yeah, that's what it is to be a professional. I only shoot an hour per day. The rest of the time is scouting. I only shoot an hour per day for the golden hour, the sunset, and the blue hour, and sometime a bit the night. I've done a few night shots. They're pretty good. High vintage. If you have like a whole view of a city, night shot can kind of work. But usually, these three things. I see so many people shooting, not at this time, but yeah, but it's dinner time with my family, or my wife wants me home, or you have to be around that time out there shooting, and then you can go when it's dark. Okay, I'm insisting on that. One thing also, simple tip, but also that can save you a lot of shot, because you want your shot to be very, very sharp, is to put your timer on 2 seconds, and make sure that your middle leg on your tripod is not too high up, that it's a bit lower down, so that because you can get, if you have like over 5 or 10 seconds, if you use your middle leg, you have a tendency, unless you have a very heavy tripod, but if you have a light tripod, I never put my center leg up, and always use a 2-second timer, so you're not touching the camera when you shoot, or even better, use a remote. Okay, and that was the last tip. So shoot at the right light. Always use a tripod to get the lone exposure, lowest ISO possible. Shoot in manual mode to control better your light. Expose for the highlights. Finding leading lines. Find a good foreground, middle ground, and background. Use Sun Seeker and PhotoCalc as the apps. Use timer and don't put your middle leg up. Try to simplify your composition. And the last is find a unique viewpoint. Now, this is a photo that I shot from the hotel. I knew the hotel manager, and he got me up on the roof, and I took this view of Notre Dame and all the Paris, but nobody in Paris has this photo, because I was probably one of the only professional photographers that went up there and did that shot. So take the time to find locations which are, Google, use 500px, Google like best vintage point in New York or in, Seattle, whatever, and do some research. You will find there is amazing restaurants that have amazing vintage points, which are more unique. Don't try to get a tourist shot all the time, which is what I try to do here. I even met the panel and had amazing clouds that day. So voila, that's my 10 tips that I've learned in 10 years. I hope that it will help you. Also, one question I'm getting all the time is, which courses is best if you want to begin? So to answer the question of people asking me, what course I should start on, if you go to my website, photoserge.com, and you click on tutorials, let's say you want to learn Lightroom. I've done so many courses over the years that I can understand it's a bit hard to get around. But if you go to Lightroom, basically you got first the bundle, like the Lightroom 5 training bundle will have anything you need. What it is basically 4 courses. One which is the how to import, organize, and export your photo. The other one is, and the main one, that's the Lightroom 5 retouching, where I show you every tool in Lightroom, how to retouch, and then we do different projects. You can see on the website all the before and afters. And then you have the Lightroom 5, how to make, geotag your photos, how to use the map module, how to make books, and how to print your photos, and then how to make slideshows and web galleries. So that's really the Lightroom 5 training bundle is what I would recommend if you want to start learning Lightroom. But if you know well Lightroom and you want to start learning Photoshop, then you can go over to Photoshop, and Photoshop for photographers would be the way to go. It's like a 5-6 hours training. And I try to make it from the viewpoint of somebody just opening up Photoshop for the first time. And so we start off by doing camera roll things, which is like very easy. And then we get into sky replacement, digital blending, HDR, black and white, artistic black and white, panoramas, and composite. So I'm trying to, all of Photoshop So it's a great course for people which are Lightroom users and they just want to know a little bit of Photoshop, or somebody that knows a little bit of Photoshop and would want to go more into it. Okay, that's all for now, and back to me. Thank you so much for listening. If you have other tips you want to share with the rest of the world, please feel free. Just leave a comment in the YouTube section. Also, if you want me to teach you some other stuff or share some other ideas, leave me a comment in the YouTube section. And if you like it, leave me a comment in the YouTube section. In any case, what you do, leave me a comment in the YouTube section. Thank you so much for your help, and I will see you in another episode. Mesdames et messieurs, au revoir.